A very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to it. This is the Thursday installment of The Agenda. We're live to you from the SABC's headquarters in Auckland Park, Johannesburg. I'm Olisi Masango. It's great to be in your company as I take you through all the stories that set the tone and agenda for the day going forward. We've got a packed first hour for you, and the first hour of the program starts now. We start here. The South African Police Service has confirmed that attorney Dominic Mjiako, who represented accused number 2 in the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial, was a police officer who was dismissed back in 2016. Now, the police spokesperson, Brigadier Atlenda Mateo, said late last night that the individual referred to is a former member of SABC who was dismissed from the service in 2016. Now, let's take you straight to court and catch up with developments there. Criselda Lewis is on standby to give us the latest. A very good morning to you, Criselda. Thank you so much for your time. So take us through what is likely to happen today.
Well, a very good morning to you, Mxolisi. You would recall the intro that you just read. That all stems from what happened in cross-examination yesterday. Advocate Zandile Mshololo for accused number 5, basically putting it to the lead investigator, Brigadier Bongani Kaninda, who was under cross-examination, whether he knew that the lawyer who had been representing accused number 2, Bongani Ntanzi, from the early appearances of the accused in court, and also during his alleged confession that he made to a magistrate, whether Brigadier Bongani Kaninda knew that Dominic Mjiako was actually a police officer until 2016, and that he had worked for crime intelligence. The response from Brigadier Kaninda basically saying that he didn't know. It was news to him, basically, that Dominic Mjiako had worked within the South African Police Service, because you must recall that Kaninda had indicated during investigations that also worked together with crime intelligence as well. Now, what we know is that up until 2016, Dominic Mjiako had been working for the South African Police Service's Crime Intelligence Division, and we understand this was the legal division of crime intelligence. This is what has been confirmed by the South African Police Service spokesperson, Atlenda Mate. And now this raises questions, because part of that cross-examination Mxolisi yesterday was that the defense was basically trying to say that Ntanzi had been set up. The person who had been hired allegedly by him until we know the 5th of March 2020 was Dominic Mjiako. This is the person who is said to have been present when he allegedly gave the second confession to a magistrate, and it also represented accused number 2, Bongani Ntanzi, during the early appearances at the Boksburg Magistrates Court, you would recall. So the defense is basically insinuating that Ntanzi may have been set up, that this was a former police officer who had basically set Ntanzi up into this alleged confession. Recall, what we heard last week inside this court was that court records show that Dominic Mjiako had represented accused number 2, Bongani Ntanzi, but Ntanzi at some point had fired him. This was on the 5th of March 2020. Fired him, and according to what we heard in court, Ntanzi says he was firing Mjiako because he wanted him to confess to the murder of Senzo Meyiwa. So all of this is seriously unraveling, but I want us to take a listen to this clip about how it all started when Advocate Zandile Mshololo had put it to Brigadier Bongani Kaninda whether he knew that Dominic Mjiako had worked for crime intelligence. Let's take a listen.
You had indicated that when you interviewed accused number 2, you indicated that he did not want to appoint a legal representative.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So it means he was not legally represented on the 18th and also on the 19th.
Yes, I'm aware of that, my lord.
Okay. When did you become aware that the accused number 2 was represented by Mr. Mjiako?
On the 23rd of June, 2020, my lord.
Was it your first time to see or to meet with Mr. Mjiako on that day?
Yes, it was. I didn't know him from time immemorial. That was the first time for me, my Lord, to see him.
Do you know that Mjiako has been a member of the SAPS up until 2017? 2016, sorry.
No, I wouldn't know, my Lord.
You don't know that?
No, I wouldn't know. We didn't discuss that. And we are not acquainted, and I never worked with him. If he was in the police, I certainly didn't come across him or interacted with him in any matter, for that matter.
And in this matter, when you were in... Sorry.
You may proceed.
Okay. In this matter, when you were investigating this matter, you testified that you were working with the Crime Intelligence Unit. Am I correct?
I said it was driven, crime intelligence driven operation. So there was intelligence gathering that was present. That's correct, my Lord.
Okay. And Mjiako was working in the unit of Crime Intelligence Unit. You didn't know that?
No, I didn't know, my Lord. As I said, and I'm repeating it without fear of contradiction, my Lord, I've never worked with him. If he was in the police, I've never come across him. That was my first time, my Lord.
Right, having listened to a snippet of that and all those proceedings, Griselda, talk to us about how does this now change things in light of what we've just listened to now?
Right, so first of all, Mxolisi, with the startling revelations that were made by Advocate Zandile Mshololo yesterday, basically telling this court that Mjiako had been in the employ of the South African Police Service up until 2016. What we also now know was that he was dismissed, we understand, or discharged from the South African Police Service. This is what we're getting from the record from the South African Police Service after we made an inquiry, after these revelations were made inside court. We understand that Mjiako had been under investigation. We're still waiting to hear from the South African Police Service, looking at their records, and if, of course, they can disclose, given that this would be an employer-employee or former employee incident, whether they'll be able to disclose exactly what he was discharged from the South African Police Service in 2016. But also, what is going to be very interesting here today, Mxolisi, is that you would recall that the trial within a trial is basically being heard to determine whether the confessions or the alleged confessions of accused number 1 and 2 can be admitted into the main trial. Remember, accused number 1 and 2 have indicated that they were assaulted into allegedly making these statements. They'd been beaten up, they'd been tortured, they'd been tubed. And what we're expected to hear today, towards the end of proceedings yesterday, the station commander from the Silverton South African Police Service, police officer Karel Swanepoel, he was on the stand and he's expected to go into the occurrence books, because you must remember, when someone is detained at a police station, when they're brought in, the occurrence book will indicate that they've been checked in. Once something happens to them, if they're assaulted, those things need to be documented in the books that are kept at the place where this individual is being detained. So he will testify very much this morning to what the occurrence book said. Were there any incidents? Was there any complaint from accused number 1, Muzi Sibiya, about allegations of assault, whether he had been assaulted? So the station commander of the Silverton South African Police Service will shed light on that this morning, pertaining to whether Muzi Sibiya, who is accused number 1 in this matter, whether the occurrence book, any of the books at the Silverton South African Police Service station, indicate there were any incidents surrounding him which would point towards assault or assault.
And Griselda, just before I let you go, I want us to backtrack a bit to that matter with the transcripts, which was a highly contentious matter in court, and the importance therein of those transcripts. How did the matter of those transcripts unfold in court?
Well, I'm going to say it was very important to have a look at those transcripts, because remember, it relates to the issue which now was breaking news overnight, relating to this particular lawyer who, according to the court records, had represented accused number 2, Bongani Ntanzi, in the early days of his court appearances at the Boksburg Magistrates Court, and when he allegedly made the second confession to the magistrate. So what the court was trying to establish was whether Ntanzi had been legally represented. Remember, we've also heard inside this court that Ntanzi had said he doesn't know Mjiako. So those transcripts, those court records were basically going to tell us, as we heard, we also heard the state prosecutor, Advocate George Baloy, during those early appearances in the Boksburg Magistrates Court, where Dominic Mjiako had been placed on the record inside court. That's what we heard from that audio recording, that he was representing accused number 2, Bongani Ntanzi, and had only fired him on the 5th of March 2020, accusing him of wanting him to plead guilty to the death or the killing of Senzo Meyiwa. So it was very important to establish, because Ntanzi said he didn't know Mjiako, but the records on inside this court actually show otherwise, because he didn't raise up at that particular point during the first appearances when Mjiako was placed on the record to say this is the lawyer that's representing him. Nowhere did he stand up and say, I don't know who this man is. So that was quite critical in this particular aspect.
All right, Criselda Lois watching that story for us. Thanks very much indeed for that update. We no doubt will be touching base with you a bit later on in the program.